Yeah, we're just letting everybody tune in before we get started. Welcome again to the Primata Cordox mini farm remotely. Thanks again to Canine Chronicle for hosting this on their page. We got a lot of great feedback from our last video. Thank you everybody who sent messages and phone calls about how much they enjoyed it. We have Maggie's parents, Pam and Dave Peat, here today, longtime AKC judges, Dachshund breeders, and they are going to be doing a breed-specific examination on 3 of our girls, 2 of which are in season, to make it more fun. As they go over the dogs, they'll be explaining how they're going over them and what they're feeling for and what they're feeling. We will do the priorities that they feel they need. We'll do a little question in between each dog. So we'll start with Pam. She'll do a dog, couple questions, another dog, couple questions, another dog, couple questions, then we'll switch over to Dave and do the same thing. Then at the end, we will do another Q&A. We'll try to field the questions that are on topic with what's going on. So let's just give it a few more minutes for people to join, and then we'll get started.
Don't get your lip caught. Oh, we have food.
It's really good.
Using your pork chop.
Mm-hmm. It's the end of my pork chop.
Sam, would you like?
Last time we were going to talk about our Color Street nails from Janice Hayes. They weren't in yet. Thank you, Janice Hayes. Color Street nails.
Not sponsored.
Not sponsored.
Week old. Not that I've done much. Well, sewing, but that's it.
So we'll do a table examination, and then we'll go down and do a sort of a modified down and back and go around to fit into the camera view. This is going to be less about going over structure like we did as a breeder, and more from the point of view of a judge and what they are looking for as they're judging the dog.
Remember, you get 2 minutes.
This will also, as well as being a breed-specific exam, they'll go over some of the tips and techniques that maybe future or prospective judges would be interested in, as far as doing ring procedure and things like that. So I think we've been up for about 5 minutes. We can go ahead and get started, unless you guys want to say anything first.
No pressure, Mom.
Okay, one of the things that I'd like to go over is some of my pet peeves on when people examine dachshunds or judge dogs in general. 2 of the 3 varieties, what you see is what you get in most situations. So this breed, as much as they like it, you don't have to massage them. However, there are certain places that you must touch. And if you don't, and I'm at ringside, I'm liable to say something to you. The other thing is, when you're judging dachshunds, don't check their temperament on the table. Most of them have had bad things done, like nails, too much brushing, that kind of thing. When I'm going to judge a dachshund, I would start about 4 or 5 feet from the side, stop and look at the overall outline. That's because I have already had them move. When this breed comes in the ring, I don't care if there's 20 of them or 1. They all go around first. You never get down and set up a dachshund in my ring. I don't want to see how good Maggie Peat or how bad Pam Peat can set up a dachshund. I want to see how it moves. Then when I get to the table, I'm looking at, what does the structure say about the movement? I walk up to them, I stop, I look at them, I'm looking for an oval chest. I'm looking for thick, tight, arched toes with thick pads. I don't care if those front feet turn out slightly. Our standard is very specific. They can turn out slightly. If you've ever tried to stand and you're a larger person with your feet straight ahead, it's not comfortable. You turn it out slightly, just like a dachshund. I walk up, look at its head. I ask the person to show me the bite, and I look at it from both sides. Some of these handlers are very good at camouflaging issues. Remember, scissors is fine, level is okay, anything else is a serious fault. I look at where the ears set. Please do not pick up the ears on a dachshund. Nowhere does it say they have to go to the end of the nose. These aren't foxhounds or coonhounds. I look at the shape of the eye. Almond, dark. I run my hand up here. Very slight stop, slightly rounded. It's a wedge from both directions. That means here and here. And there better be an underjaw. And you should be amazed at the size of their teeth. To quote one of my instructors, they have big effing teeth. All right. I don't examine the front from the front. I look at it, oval. I'll run my hands this way. I'll put my hand underneath here or run it down this way. This is like a lady's underwear bra. If you don't hit something there, it's not a good front. Oh, good, I could scratch my nose.
River.
Okay.
I'm going to cheat and feed.
It's okay.
This isn't appropriate baiting technique. You should bait, not feed, but they're not been in the ring, so I'm going to feed.
And please, please, please don't feed your dog when I'm going over the head. By now, if you want to feed him, I don't care. I'm going to run my hand down here. I want it to flow gently. And I don't care if I'm doing the front, they sit down. I'm going to run my hand this way, find the point of shoulder, then I'm going to go like this. That was the withers. Point of shoulder, end of the upper arm. Does it wrap around? Reach under here. Back this way, end of ribbing. And please, find the end of the keel.
You got to put your hand up farther underneath so they can see it, because
Oh.
she's hairy.
Okay. I'm looking for the end of the keel. I don't want to have to do it from here, and you will find them. The standard is very specific. Reaches well back of the front legs. And ribbing, the end of the ribbing is here, but the keel is here. This is the ribbing, not this way. How long is the loin? Now, normally I would have already been done. How long is the loin? Where is the top line? From the withers to the start of the croup is the top line. That has to be strong. Slight round off of the croup to the set on of the tail. Croup, set on of the tail. Not croup, set on of the tail up here. Not here, back here. I don't care whether they carry it this way. Where does it come off? And I check the whole tail, all directions, for kinks, curves, strictures, whatever. I will tell you, they will tell you that it got kinked in utero or it was broken. I don't care, it's a defect, but it's a fault. If I have to get all the way to here to have a problem is a pretty nice dog. Come around to the back, feel the hock. Do I feel them all over? No. And I'm done. Back feet are smaller, but they still are tight, thick pads. A Dachshund with bad feet, thin pads, flat, splayed out. What was the word we used?
Dead baby hands.
TT feet. They do not have TT feet. Big, flat, thick padded feet. Snowshoes. Thank you, David. Okay, I've been over the dog. That's it. Now we're going to...
Give your 2 cents on the dog?
Okay.
You're going to wait till it moves.
Well, I don't care what it looks like standing on the table. I want to know what it looks like using the pieces that I have not felt. I have a pretty good idea what it's going to do.
So in your mind, right now, when the dog is going to move, you have an impression of what you
Right.
think it's going to move like.
Right. If I've got an upright shoulder, if I've got a short upper arm, I'm not saying that's what she has. I'm saying if I get this square line here, if I get this board level top line, if I get a tail that comes out in the middle of the croup, if when they're standing there, the front is very wide, short upper arm, they're going to move like an Affenpinscher. Now let's see what this little girl will do for me.
River.
Now this is not a seasoned veteran in the ring every day. I watch them go away. That's the first thing you're going to see. I want those rear legs parallel, a little wider, but not spraddleast. And when they come at me, I want those front feet to come forward, nice thick pads, and when they stop under themselves.
You ready for my go around?
Yes, please. This is where you look at the top line, tail set, reach and drive. These don't do a flying trot. Their feet should stay close to the ground. Up, 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 up. Okay, she should be able to walk into a bait stack and you should see curves, arch to the neck. I'm looking at this bitch. Now watch Maggie fix the front, bring the head forward, give me an arch of neck. She holds her top line. She stands out behind herself. The hocks are straight. If I did that, she would not look like that. But even now, look at where her foot is in the front. Look at the angle between her neck, coming in to the withers, and then straight out. And the top line is not a board. It's flexible. Thanks, Maggie.
Okay. So stand where Tom wants and give your 2 cents on this dog.
Where do you want me, Tom?
Behind the table.
Okay, this girl I found to be of a lovely size. She has good coat, weatherproof, able to go out in the brush, shed the dirt, look good. She had nice feet. She had a pretty solid top line. She has a very pretty head. Ears are the correct size. Beautiful bite and teeth. Lovely eyes. Correct amount of bone for her size. Her front, I would say, she has a lovely prosternum, but it's a little further forward and a little straighter than I'd like. When I looked at her on the table and felt it, as I ran my hand down her neck, I ran straight into her withers, not down and out. She had the dimples in the front. She had a nice oval front. Basically, she had a slightly shorter keel than I would like, better than probably 70% of the dogs I touch. It's behind the front legs and the lowest part of the body and the ribbing is below the front leg. Her loin is a little longer than I'd like. She has a beautiful croup and tail carriage. Her rear, as with her front, is a little more narrow side to side than I would like. But it's very true. There's no hocking in. It doesn't flip out to the side. It's a very nice quality bitch.
So while Maggie's getting another dog, let's take a couple of the questions we have. Lori Emmentrout asks, will you deduct for having whiskers?
Absolutely not. You get extras for having whiskers. I love whiskers. And I will tell you that I usually don't even notice them, because if you've never cut them, they just lay them back when you look at them.
Okay. And Elliot Wenzel says, I've seen judges have the dog move in a triangle pattern. Do you prefer the triangle pattern movement or straight down and back? What pattern do you prefer?
Okay. When I judge a class of Dachshunds, and actually almost all dogs, but it started with Dachshunds, first of all, nobody gets down. The dog stands on its own. I check the armbands. The first thing I see is the class goes around. And anybody who's ever shown to me knows you'd best not run. These dogs have 4-inch legs. Most of us have longer than 4-inch legs. You should never in the class have to run with a Dachshund. And as some people will tell you, you run in my ring, you lose. So I prefer them to go around. I don't look at them stacked at all. They go on the table, I examine them, they do a simple down and back, and that's it.
All right, we're going to take one more question, and then we'll put another dog on the table. If you keep asking the questions, if we don't get to it right now, we will have a Q&A at the end. So don't worry, we'll try and get to everybody as best we can. Okay, so the final question before the next dog. Tracy Lee asks, how much air do you like to see under the dog between the keel and the table?
Less than a fist. However, more than 2 inches. They have to be able to do their job. And remember, these dogs come in various sizes. So this dog that weighs 30 pounds is going to have a little more air under it than this dog that weighs 10 pounds. There really are 10-pound Dachshunds, folks, honest.
Okay, so we're going to start with another dog. And if you're asking questions right now, we don't get to them towards the end, please re-ask them because I'll lose them up in the feed. So, yeah, just want to let you know. All right.
Okay, I'm going to let you folks look at this bitch just like I would do if I was judging her. The first thing I noticed when I looked at her as Maggie was setting her up is she's got really big feet. And Dachshunds don't dig with their feet. They dig with their mouth and they push the dirt out of the way with their feet. But they also beat the brush. So big, tight feet are great. I stop and I look at her from the front. I look at the shape of her head, where her ears set, her eyes,
No.
her pigment.
No.
Now, these dogs are all red. If I was judging a black and tan, if I was judging wires, if I was judging a dapple or a piebald, I would be looking at eye pigment, eye rim pigment, the nose, the lips. If I looked at this dog and she had a brown nose, that is incorrect and would be a large fault. If I looked at this dog and she was black and tan and she had tan on her ears, that's a mismark. Whether she's a dapple or not, that's a mismark. Remember, this breed is a chondroplastic dwarf. From here up is normal size. All the proportions are normal. From here down, it's like God took the legs and went whoop and smushed them. To do that, the bones are curved. The vessels go the wrong way, as the vet will tell you. All right, I'm going over this bitch. Look at her head here. Please show me the bite. And no, we don't check all the way back. Now, this little girl's got a little chip off of one of her canines. Big deal.
Not a big deal.
No, I noticed it, but I didn't care. Run my hands over here, hit my breastbone, put my hand under here. Now, when I put my hand under here, I better get something filling it. You get a handful.
Stand, Allie.
Find the shoulders, point of shoulders right there. Run my hand this way. Check for the parentheses. Point of shoulder, upper arm, ribbing. And I would run my hand under here, and I'll keep going. But you better get something behind the leg, and the deepest part of the chest should be hidden behind the front leg. Down here, feel the ribbing. It's okay. Again, goes down to meet the set onto the tail. Feel the whole tail, feel the rear.
Good girl, Al.
Remember, we're looking at the whole dog,
Want to get Daff out?
not just pieces. You watch her go away. Again, you're looking for both the width, whether they're straight legs or whether they kick in or out, and how wide are they. You look at the front, and as the final, I send them around because they're a little more settled at this point, and you're going to see top line. Now, these girls, when you have boys in the ring, you may get those tails coming up. Carriage, I could care less.
Okay, I'll do a front first.
Okay. She should be able to walk in, and don't be fooled by the hair that flips out. You have already felt her on the table. You know whether she's out an elbow or not, and she's not. And balance. None of these bitches that you've seen so far are big, but they have a lot of substance and bone. Good feet, strong ribbing. They can hunt all day. Thanks, Maggie.
Go stand behind the table.
Huh?
The table.
Oh. Okay, on this bitch again, I like her size. I like her bone. I love her head and expression. Her front, I find a little better than the other bitch. She's got a little more width, a little more layback like this. A Dachshund front is not like this. A Dachshund front is like this, which means it curves in and then comes down like this. Everybody corrects it that way. But naturally, when they come in, they may stop with a slight turnout. That's okay. And a Dachshund, because of its length, it should stand out behind itself. This isn't like a pug or an Affenpinscher, that it's a square dog in a box. The front is back, the rear is out behind. This little bitch, I like her front better. I like the rear on the other bitch, but I like the bone and the overall makeup of this bitch a little better. Not much.
All right, so we'll take a few more questions while Maggie grabs the last dog. Joe Brady asks, what are you looking for in movement?
The movement on a Dachshund should be smooth, effortless, purposeful, active, and it should make you think of strength, not light, not airy, but it also is not overly animated. You don't get a lot this way, you don't get a lot this way, you don't get flipping. Movement should be smooth, easy. They should look like they could go like that all day long.
Let's see. We will get to some of these questions at the end. We'll do a couple that are more pertinent right now. Barb Follett asks, "How do you feel about holding the tail when the handler holds?"
For the handler to hold the tail?
Yeah.
I really don't care. It's really kind of immaterial. If the dog wants to sit down all the time, sometimes you hold it for that reason. Please don't hold it up like a beagle. Please don't hold it down, and you don't have to grab a hold of it. I really don't even notice whether you do it or not.
Okay, Nikki Rigsby asks, "How much do you fault a gay tail, a dead dragging tail?"
Okay. A gay tail, to me, by definition, has an incorrect set. That means that frequently your croup will be flat instead of curved. Your tail will come out like this and go right straight up in the air. That's defective. Remember, that's how you get these guys out of the hole. The other problem with a gay tail is, in a lot of instances with the flat croup, you've got a pelvic tilt and you're going to have a C-section because you can't get those puppies out.
But what is more?
How do I fault it?
How much of a fault? Or a dead tail, the ones that don't ever come up.
The ones that don't ever come up say to me that they don't have the correct temperament. So that's an issue within the breed. If everything else with the dog indicates that it's just the tail that's dead, there could be a lot of reasons for that. A gay tail, I don't care where the tail is carried. I want to know what the set is. A bad set, to me, is a problem. Is it as much a problem as a straight front? No. Is it as much fault as bad feet? Depends on how gay and how bad the feet are.
Right.
So that kind of tells you where it falls in the...
We'll take one more question before we move on. Let's see. Janine Starling says, "If you have a wonderful specimen but is over or undershot, does that take it completely out of competition in your view?"
A wonderful specimen, meaning it's got lots of really nice qualities.
So if you have a dog that is, say, a 6 of a 10 with a perfect bite but no serious faults, and a 9 out of 10 with an over or undershot bite, who would you put up?
It would depend on how far over and under, one. If it was a reverse scissor, I wouldn't like it. But if it was put together well, I would probably put a 9 dog with a reverse scissor over a 6 dog. In other words, I would look at the pluses in the breed and things that are hard to get. If those were there, it's kind of like a gay tail. Is it gay because of the carriage or gay because of the set? Carriage I ignore. Set is a fault. Is it as big a fault as an L from the neck to the shoulders? No.
All right, Maggie's still getting a dog. We'll do one more quickie while Maggie puts the dog on the table. This is from Sandy Arnold. "I've heard many say that going over the dog on the table should confirm what you see on the go-around. Do you agree, and do you think that is a good assessment?"
Absolutely, Sandy. That's why when I start, I want to see the dogs moving. As I've said, a handler with their salt and Dachshunds can take that little smooth 11.25-pound mini and put those feet underneath and straighten that rear out and let that top line come. And it takes 2 steps and the front disappears, the butt goes in the air, and the neck becomes vertical. I use the table to confirm what my eye already told me and to check the things that I can't see. Length of keel, bite, eye shape, confirm coat texture. 2 testicles. Okay, you ready?
Yep. We'll wait for this.
Welcome to the mini farm.
South San Francisco, 7 minutes to the airport. Like I said, 7 minutes to the airport. Is this bitch older than the other 2?
Yes, significantly.
Yes.
Okay.
So we did them in age order. The youngest bitch was first. She's 2.
Barely.
The second bitch is 5.5.
No. Allie turn is
4.
4.
And this bitch is 6.
Okay, the reason I asked that, for instance, when I judge the bred by class, if I have a question, I always ask, what is the age of the dog? Because a lot of us show youngsters, puppies, and bred by, and I'm going to look at a 10-month-old differently than I'm going to look at a 3-year-old. Also, anybody that says the Dachshunds don't change, shoulder placement changes, substance changes, carriage changes, bone changes, heads change, bites change. Okay, again, I've already seen her go around once. I'm now going to look at her. All right. Now you will notice there are little white spots on her muzzle, and she has black and white whiskers. I would not have even noticed that, and I certainly am not going to comment on it. It's immaterial. She has a beautiful underjaw and a Roman nose. We're losing those. They're not supposed to look like borzois, guys. She has beautiful dark eyes. I don't care how long her ears are, because when she's excited, they're going to come up and they're going to get shorter. May I see the bite? Thank you. Here. Here. I'm doing this one like I would actually do it. All directions on the tail. She's been de-pantsed, so she doesn't have a lot back here. And no, I don't feel this to see if there's a pencil. I'm done. All 3 of the bitches had good coat. This bitch's coat is softer than the other 2, but it's still adequate. As she goes away, you're looking, does she drive through? Do you see the back pads or the toenails? You're looking at the front. Does she lift it? Do they go straight or do they go around? Is this front oval? And in the other varieties, you will see the dimples. Depending on who groomed it, you may see them on this one. I'm not even noticing her hair. On the go around, does she hold her top line from the withers to the set-on of the croup, or does it dip in the middle? Will I put up a Dachshund with a bad top line? Depends on what it is. Okay, now I'm looking at her in profile. Where do her feet come in the front? What does her neck do? What does her top line do? Does she do the Dachshund sink? I don't care. I look at this bitch, beautiful proportions, lovely length of body, beautiful, correct length of neck. I love her head. I love the strength of underjaw, the fact that she's got a wedge head from the side and the front. And she's not had a front groomed into her. That is her front. Her feet come down under her shoulders, there, not by her eyes. These are not poodles. You can see she has a carry back of ribbing that supports her top line. Slight rise over the loin, beautiful bend of stifle. Hocks are not long. You're not going to get the same hocks that you get in a wire, but beautiful hocks, lovely tail carriage. This is a specials bitch in my mind. Okay. I gave you what I considered the positives on her. How would I change her? Might change her coat a little bit, but she's dirty, so it's hard to tell. I love her head. I love her balance. I love her attitude. Bone. If I was to change her, I'd do the same thing I do to 110% of the Dachshunds. I'd lengthen her keel. I'd shorten her loin. And that's it.
Okay, we'll take a couple more questions, and then we'll switch over and let Dave do it. And then we will go back through at the end and take a bunch more questions. So, Jennifer Bridges has asked, can there be too much point of chest?
I assume she's referring to the prosternum, as we call it in a lot of breeds. Yes, there can be too much. The dog will be out of balance, and I would almost guarantee that the end of the keel will stop. Yes, stop in front of the front legs. If you have to go around to the front of the legs to check for the keel, it's wrong. Very, very wrong. Because when a Dachshund goes down into the hole, the keel works kind of as a prow or the front on a shovel. Well, coming back out, if they don't have a length of sternum or keel, they're going to get hung up on those roots, because the Dachshund has to be able to collapse up, slide down on its chest, and then back out the same way. If you can't back out, the badger's going to eat you.
Brad Huss asks, how do you judge, or do you judge on their coats?
It comes in as a factor, especially, but you look at different pieces. In a smooth, I want a coat that's going to be protective. That means you're not going to have bald spots, you're not going to have bare areas, you're not going to have a really fine coat. These are working hunting dogs. They should be able to handle it. That's why they should have a looser, pliable skin, so it doesn't get caught on things, it moves. The wire hairs are to have a double harsh coat. That means they have an undercoat and they have a thick, wiry, harsh coat. And no, they do not have to look like a miniature schnauzer. The standard says they look like a smooth from a distance. Well, that being said, they don't have to have a huge beard. They don't have to have miniature schnauzer eyebrows. And they certainly don't need to have big, fluffy furnishings. A dog with a correct coat, you're not going to get those kinds of furnishings on. Long hairs. These dogs work in the field. You should be able to take a dog, let him work all day, mud, whatever, put him in his crate or her crate. 85 to 90% of that stuff should come off. And you should be able to brush the rest of it out. A good long hair coat, you have trouble getting wet. It should be weather resistant. And the long standard says not so profuse as to mask type. Look what they did to Cocker Spaniels.
All right, one more before we switch over to Dave. Bernadette Wagner asks, how do you judge temperament?
Temperament is something that you judge the entire time they're in the ring. It's not something that I specifically judge, except all Dachshunds in my ring will get a temperament test. I've assessed them all the way through their time in the ring. On the down and back, when they come back to me, I put my hand out. They must stand their ground. That doesn't mean they have to come up and touch me or look for bait, although frequently they'll snap at your fingers looking for bait. They also shouldn't pin their ears back, roll their eyes, hide behind mom or dad, slink. When you do your down and back in Mrs. Peat's ring and your dog comes back and I just stand there and put my hand out, it better stand and look at me.
All right, so Maggie will get the next dog up on the table, and we will switch over to Dave and start this again. Keep the questions coming.
Tell them we don't always agree.
As Pam said, they don't always agree. And we will get to them as best we can while we're going through, and then we'll take some more at the end. So, yeah.
Don't run.
More bait.
All right, so Maggie's getting some more bait, and Dave is mic'd up and ready to tell us how he thinks.
All right, I'm going to change it up a little. We're going to go on the ground first. Pam told you earlier that she likes to see the dogs move. I'll never forget the first time I judged Dachshunds many years ago. I walked into a class of open miniatures. I had 5 or 6 dogs, and I looked down, and I was thrilled. I had 4 dogs that had beautiful forechest, level top lines, nice short hocks. I was beside myself and saying, "Ooh, this is going to be hard." Then they stood up and walked. And it was like, oh my God. But then I said to myself, why are you surprised? A good handler can make a bad dog look good. A bad handler can make a good dog look bad, standing still. It's harder to do both when you're moving. So I prefer my first assessment to be of a dog going around the ring, and then I'll examine it. So right away I see a girl who's nice and sound, carries a reasonably good top line. Has nice reach and drive. Now I would fully expect that the structure of this dog will be consistent with what I've already seen. So I'm going to look at the finer points. I'm going to look at the dog. I want to see a wedge-shaped head. I want to see a nicely little rounded back skull. And, if possible, a little bit of a Roman nose. Okay? I'm going to come down. I want to see that where the end of that keel is. I'm going to go down here to see if we have depth of chest. When I do this, I'm also evaluating whether I have a round or an oval. Okay? So, I can see her feet. This bitch has nice feet. Her toes are a little on the long side. She has a nice ear set. Good eyes, nice pigmentation. And personally, I don't check bites until the end. Why is that? Because I find that most dogs and most handlers have a hard time keeping their dog's attention on the table, and the second you start checking mouths, they lose their concentration. So we're going to skip the bite. I'm going to come around here. I'm going to feel this dog's withers. Okay, there we are. We have a nice layback. We have a good return of upper arm. We have nice carry back of rib to a reasonably short loin. Nice keel.
They can't see that on that side. You gotta show the other side.
Nice keel. Nice short hocks. Good tail set. Good solid tail. This bitch, you could pull this dog out of the hole with no problem. Pam mentioned the importance of the front and the keel when the dog is in the hole. The tail is equally important. If you have a dog stuck in a hole and you want to pull it out by its tail, you have two issues. If you have a kink or a break or a curve, you won't be able to pull the dog straight out of the hole. The other thing is, if your dog has got a tail set straight up in the air, guess what's going to happen to that tail in the hole? It's going to go straight into the top of the hole. And you probably will have a hard time even getting it, grabbing it. Take her down and back.
Please.
All right, nice down and back, solid. Coming back at me, very nice. Remember, as they move, they tend to converge. They're not going to be equidistant, straight as as an arrow. They're going to come together. But when they stop, they'll be pretty straight. And then temperament test, as Pam said, we just want to make sure that they're not going to back away. For me, this is a lovely young bitch. If I were to change something on this bitch, I would probably widen her rear a little bit. And that may come as she gets older and develops more muscle tone. I like her front. I like the way she comes at me.
All right, let's take a couple of questions while we get another dog. This goes back to, let's see, where was it? Barbara Burns asks, I've seen some with Roman noses. Is this appropriate? Just touches on that you actually like a little Roman nose.
Actually, it is appropriate. I believe one of the last, not the last, but a couple of revisions of the standard back, we were asked to remove a reference to another animal, and it used to talk of a ram's nose. And so that was removed. But we still want, and it's still appropriate, to have a dog that's nose comes and just slightly breaks down.
Let's see here. Danny Gonzalez asks, do you judge the three varieties differently besides coat type? If so, what do you look for in each?
They are all the same dog. We had a conversation this morning, and it was one of those that I felt for the first time I had a better understanding of why new judges have a very hard time.
We're just going to pause for the airliner.
We're pausing for the intercontinental flight.
Today we're on the flight.
Okay, I think we can get back to it.
The Dachshund Standard, as long as it is, and it's one of the longest, is remarkably short in terms of information for the judge. There are very few specifics. Tell me what the proportions are of the dog. You won't find it in the standard. Tell me the ratio of the muzzle to the skull. You won't find it. You'll find something about weight, but it won't be specific in terms of between here and here. You won't get a height standard, but with a 1 or 2 or possibly even 3 inches variation. You get none of that. However, you get 2 full pages describing coat, color, texture, etc. And so very often I would imagine a new judge of Dachshunds can be very confused and spend a lot of time focusing on, gee, is this a proper dapple, and is this got the right kind of coat, is this the correct color? They're all Dachshunds, whether they're big or little, whether they're smooths or wires. They're all Dachshunds. They should be built the same. They should function the same. The color type of coat should have no bearing on which is better.
All right, well, that answers the last question I was going to ask. Would you judge color over movement? So, all right, so we'll go with our next dog here.
Just make like a round
Like a big
teardrop, big teardrop. All right, so moving away, it's hard to see with the thickness of this dog's tail, but the rear tends to be a little narrower. Coming at me, I'm seeing what I think is a very nice front. However, and this is important for you new judges especially, you might have taken a quick look at that and thought, gee, that looks a little wide. And frequently, grooming can move your eye and change what you think you see. This bitch has very nice furnishings on her front legs. If these are left untouched, they will get pretty long. And they can throw your eye. They can come out like this. We had a friend, a breeder of wire-haired Dachshunds, who was a wonderful person, a wonderful breeder. She bred dogs for many, many years. Became a judge. She was a fabulous Dachshund judge, except when it came to long hairs. Because when she judged the long hairs, she could not look past the hair. So, this one, again, head, eye shape, pigmentation, forechest, roundness, no. Oval, yes. Beautiful feet, nice tight in the elbows. Again, nice smooth lay in of the neck. There's your upper arm. There's your shoulder, consistent with what I saw moving. Rib cage, keel, set on rear, nice tail.
I'm just going to interrupt for a second. There's a few comments about the jumpiness when they're moving. It's not your feed. It's just, I need new cameras. So.
All right, let's take her down and back. I want you to especially watch the front as it comes toward you and look for that hair that throws your eye.
Going away too.
Excellent. Standing still, look at the beautiful front on this dog. The forechest, the nice angled lay in of the neck, a beautiful the lineup of the leg straight underneath the withers. Beautiful, beautiful carry back. Again, this right now she's stretched a little too far. When she comes back up, your top line is correct. You see that very slight rise over the loin. It is not flat.
Straight. From out of half.
So Terry Carter asks, any chance that we could see the heads from the front? And I will answer this. Yes, at the end we'll put some dogs back on the table and turn them the other way. Let's see here. How do you judge on the bitch's underjaw?
Well, if you've been watching, if you were a rep, you should have given me a fail on both of those dogs, because at no time did I check their bites.
Yeah, but I did.
That's really when you're going to see the strength of the underjaw, because you're going to see a width of jaw and an occlusion of the front teeth that tells you that this is very correct. If you have a narrow jaw that does not carry really forward, you will get a very snipey look to the front. And so underjaw, to me, you see it more looking at it from the side and when you check the bite.
Leslie Earl asks, what defines short hocks when they are half the height of the dog?
I think a shorter hock is one that is consistent with the lengths of the upper arm, of the layback of shoulder, of the first and second thigh. They all should be the same. Now, you won't find that in standard. It doesn't talk about it. Some of us who've been around a long time remember a drawing that was done many, many, many years ago called the Horswell chart, which was a pencil drawing of the skeleton of the dachshund. And it spoke in terms of proportions. And I think a lot of us keep this in the back of our heads, if you want. The measurements are from the tip of the nose to the occiput is the length of the head, which should equal the length of the neck from the occiput to the withers, which twice should equal the length of the back from the withers to the set-on of the tail. Again, and the tail should be a single repetition of the length from the tip of the nose to the occiput. Again, height is going to be approximately 1.5 of that length.
All right, one more quickie as Maggie gets ready with the last dog. Deb Loeffner asks, are rear dew claws a fault?
The rear dew claw is not spoken about,
Yes, it is. It says.
but they should be removed.
Okay. Let's do
It makes
The
it,
left.
think of it this way. The problem is a lot of people don't understand the importance of a rear in a dachshund. When a dachshund is in the den, in the hole, trying to move forward, as we've said, it digs with its teeth. It plows with its prosternum. It pushes the dirt out of the way with its front legs. And it propels itself forward with its rear. And if you have a rear that does nothing but dig forward and come back and stop, driving the rear up to the top of the tunnel, it does nothing to move the dog forward. And Pam has already discussed carry back of rib, carry back of keel provides that angle necessary for the dog to slide up and back over any kind of an obstruction in the hole, like a root. Let's do the last bitch because we're
well. And to add to the dew claw question there, if you have dew claws on the rear leg and they're propelling down a hole with roots and bark, as we've seen on dogs with rear dew claws, they just dangle there. If that gets caught up on a branch or a rib, it's going to get ripped off.
It's not only unnecessary; it could create a problem.
And it doesn't do anything.
We have 30 minutes.
Okay.
Oh.
We have 30 minutes.
All right, here's our last bitch. Beautiful rear movement. A little soft in the top line. Beautiful coming at me.
Did you step on something?
She says, this isn't nice grass. It's not flat like a rubber mat.
Did you step on something?
That's her rear, Max. Check her rear. I think it's rear.
It's this one.
Yeah.
There you go.
Want to try again?
No, that's right. Put her up.
This bitch is significantly bigger.
So Maggie just whispered that this bitch is significantly bigger. She's also our senior citizen, so to speak. We had a question about underjaw. This is underjaw. See it? See it?
Move your hand.
It's not pointed.
It doesn't come like this. It doesn't come like this. It's under the dog. You can see it when you look straight on. You can see the jaw.
Here, turn your head.
So, there it is. Nice dark pigment. A beautiful eye. A beautiful head. Ear set. Could be a little higher, but I'm picking nits. Beautiful forechest. Nice oval. Good feet, maybe a little long in the toe. That could be a function of conditioning. All right. Nice slide back. There's your ribbing. Here's your keel,
Loin. Loin.
your loin, and then your keel is right
It's back further.
here. So we used to teach, you have a hard time doing this today, that you could put your thumb on the end of the keel and your pinky on the penis of the dog. Good luck today. It's not easy to do. One of the things I love about this bitch is she has a in my mind, an absolutely beautiful top line that comes up into this beautiful croup with a nice set of tail, good solid tail going down. Again, a strong rear. I don't get too worried about a dog that's a little hockey on the table. It's not a natural place for the dog to be. This is not a place where I, quote unquote, judge the dog. It's a place where I look to make sure that what I see in motion is reflected in structure.
Plus she's in season.
So don't take her yet. Let's see the bite. All right.
Dave, why don't you check that bite again, but stand back a little bit so people can see it. There you
All right. If you saw how nice and tight the lower incisors fit, it confirms what we talk about when we say underjaw. She's all right.
She's a princess.
Oh.
Am I too close?
No, that's fine. I mean, you can stand back a little bit, but...
Okay, Maggie fixed the dog's rear, but her structure is so good, in my opinion, it didn't need to be. I mean, there. That's her natural stance, right there.
In the back.
In the rear. Beautiful top line, beautiful carry back. A body that, in my mind, you have a hard time beating.
Maggie, can you put her back on the table when you're done so we can get this question that I think with her on the table for Dave to explain would be beneficial?
Which way do you want?
All right, so that's good. So this question is by Joe Brady. How much would you fault this bitch for the undershot jaw? All other qualities are very good.
Undershot.
This
This bitch is perfect.
Scissor.
That's a scissor. These are the lower teeth. They fit tightly underneath and behind the upper teeth.
And the canines are.
And the canines correctly mesh.
That's why I check both sides.
I would be shocked seeing this bitch without even putting my hand, lifting her lip. I would be shocked if she had an undershot jaw.
Let's take some more, our final questions. Pam, why don't you and Dave stand lovingly close to each other since you're sharing his mic? So we had a question earlier and people asked, why don't you discuss together, how would you guys have placed these dogs?
I'll go first. I would put the first bitch, number one. Excuse me. The last bitch with the beautiful underjaw that I said was specials quality, I would have number one. The first bitch, I would have number two. And the second bitch with the absolutely exquisite feet, I would have placed third. The reason why I would do it that way is that I felt the overall balance. You got to stay here because you've got my mic. I have to talk to your chest. I like the overall balance on the number one bitch more than the number two bitch. The overall certain qualities in the second bitch I absolutely adored. And I would use her for breeding to certain dogs. The youngest bitch, the first one, I've known for quite a while. And today I would have put her second. The overall winner of the class, and probably the variety and maybe even the breed, is the older bitch, who, by the way, has had 2 litters. And one of the things I would say is that first bitch, once she's had a litter, that rear very likely will widen out a little more. It's very true, but it'll widen out a little more. And that's the way I place them.
Well, to me, the senior citizen is far and away the winner of that class of 3.
Yep.
Far and away, without a doubt.
First time around.
Yeah, you know, the second she takes a few steps, even when she doesn't like the ground that we have to move her on, her body, her structure, her carry back of rib, her head, her underjaw, her eye.
Her bone.
Only if I were to change something on that bitch, the only thing I would change is I would make her coat a little harder. And once again, that may be a function of age. It may be a function of having 2 litters.
Or dirt.
Or who knows what else. I would differ with Pam on the other 2.
Always we do.
And that's because I think, for me, the second bitch is a little stronger reach and drive. She's a little smoother going around.
Uses herself
and
better.
Uses every ounce of what she has. The young bitch is extremely pretty, but to me not quite as accomplished in terms of going around the ring. It may be a function of age. It may be a function of muscle tone, because the fact is, as dogs get older and they develop muscles and muscle tone, they can do one of 2 things. They can either get better or they can get worse.
And load up in the front and do bad things. And that's why in every litter, we always kept 1, 2, or 3. Maggie's pick, David's pick, my pick.
Okay, so let's take some questions. And I'm gonna work from the newest and going backwards for a little bit. Is the older the dog better coming to the ring for the first time?
Not for me. I judge them based on their age. As I mentioned, when I do the bred by class, if I've got a dog that I feel might be younger, most Dachshunds are going to be mature closer to 2 years of age. They're going to be young appearing before that. So I'm going to ask. But no, I judge them. I don't think they're necessarily better. Do I think we special our dogs too young? Absolutely. Because there's a big difference between a show dog, a finishable dog, a champion, and a special.
I didn't quite understand the question in the sense of coming into the ring. I have on a number of occasions judged a class of dogs where the first time around, based on the way they moved and their performance, I chose dog A. I kind of like dog D, but I thought, it's really not, it's not as altogether.
And then it gets better.
Then after I examined them and put them back down and sent them down and back and put them back in line, because if I have a singleton, quite frankly, I'm going to go around, we're going to go down and back, and I've already made my assessment. I see no reason to spend more time moving the dog. I'm going to give it its ribbon and we will move on. If we have a class with more than one dog, at the end, they will all go around together. And if dog D demonstrates to me that what you first saw was just somebody who was getting settled, who wasn't really ready, and actually outperformed dog A, I will put that one up.
And the other thing I would say is when I'm comparing, for instance, at the winners level, and I've had 6 classes of singletons or very narrow, I know which dogs I'm thinking I'm going to use. They're going to go around once. If I want to compare two dogs, I only move those two. I do not move the entire class. There's no reason to do it. It just gives false hope, or you can outthink yourself and get yourself in a real bind.
Yes. And again, if you're at that point where you're in winters and you've got two dogs you want to move again, please give them an equal shot. Do not send them across the ring from where they are standing.
Indoors especially.
Indoors, they are going to end up, one may end up going down and back on a mat, and the other one may go down and back across 2 or 3 mats, as well as the cement, and you're not going to get a true comparison. Outdoors, you may end up with a hole in the middle of the ring where dog number 2 goes, and a nice level piece of ground where dog number 1 goes. Make it equal. Send them down and back in the same place.
And the other thing is, some dogs want to be first in line, and some dogs don't want to be first in line. If you've got it down to 2 animals and you can't make up your mind, send them around and then switch them. You may be very surprised what you get.
I had a bitch that I showed who was shown in the open class, was never the first bitch in the class, and won that class probably 7 times. And 6 times in the winner's class, since she was from open, she was the first dog in line. And she hated being first.
So she was reserve.
And she had 6 reserves because she just didn't want to do it in front.
Tracy Lee asks, how big is too big in standards? Even though the standard doesn't have an upper size, if a dog can't fit in a rabbit hole, is it too big?
We're not rabbit.
Well, one of the things I would say is, yes, can they be too big? Yes. Is there an absolute weight? No. Because they have to be able to function. If the dog is agile enough, if it can fold itself up, or whatever you want to call, then it's going to be okay. However, if it's big and clunky and ugly, yes. Can it be too small? No. Can it be too fine-boned? Yes.
Yes. Well, first of all, standard Dachshunds were not bred. Our standard Dachshunds were not bred to go to rabbit holes. If you're in Europe, they have what's called the Kaninchen Tekel, which is the rabbit-sized dog, which is probably closer to our miniature and would go into the hole easily.
The 11 to 16 pounders.
Our
That's miniatures.
a really big
Kanichen's a little.
standard dog. It depends a lot on its structure, if it's got the correct oval chest, if it's got the correct carry back of rib, if it's got a correct front so that it can move underneath the ground. It might be harder for that dog to accomplish its job, but it's not impossible. I think back to one of the first dogs that we had that actually was Maggie's first special. And his name was Bert. And Bert was a pretty good-sized dog. We happened to be at a show where there was a demonstration on Earth Dog. And one of the neat things was that they had a plexiglass section of an Earth Dog tunnel that had a plastic root in the middle of the section. And we sent Bert into this hole. And he went right over the top of that root and came right back out over the top of that root. So really big. If you get into a dog that's close to 40 pounds, I think you're going to have a hard time for that dog to do its job. And in all likelihood, it's
Or
not
to look correct.
It's not going to look correct anyway. It's probably going to be round. It's probably going to be clunky, heavier bone. It's probably not going to have the correct angulation.
Ugly head.
A head too that would not be pleasing, or as we've been known to say, stop a train. Frequently that's what you end up with, a really, really large dog.
So we've had a few questions on to elaborate more on the Dachshund rear, and specifically to talk about sickle hawks and longer hawks that seem to be more prevalent in some people's eyes in standard long hairs. So Maggie has another bitch to put on the table, so you can kind of go over rear angles, maybe into a little more detail in what you're wanting to see.
Okay, from the side.
Let me move over here.
Oh, because you got the mic. Okay, first of all, this should be a series of right angles. And they should be approximately the same length. And we're going to get approximately. They're not going to be exactly. But if you get this bone is short and this bone is long, you're going to get it this way, or it's going to come way the heck back. And what's going to happen is the rear is going to come up underneath her tummy, tap her tummy, and come straight down again here. And the front's going to pull this dog all over the rig because this part isn't functional.
It's not providing propulsion. So when they say sickle hawk, we're talking about this appearing to be a sickle.
One piece.
One piece.
Here, I'll put
We
it
also
here.
call them belly tappers or tummy scratchers. They come up way up here. That's not reach. Okay? And they very rarely come past the vertical. We talk about seeing the pads. Actually, I think I prefer to see a little bit of the toenail.
The other thing is, you heard me say something about the Dachshund sink. Well, if this dog is built correctly, she can bend at that stifle and sink right down. If she won't do it. If she has a long hock, she's not able to do that. You won't see it. The other thing is, if you have a longer hock here, and let's say it is coming through this way, well, if this is not balanced with the front and it pushes through, one of two things happens. It either goes that way, out, so you see this, or the butt goes up in the air. So we stack them up. Of course, if I stack them up, they're usually up in the butt anyway.
Okay. I think that's good.
Underline. Underline, Tom.
Underline. We did have that. Let's see. I'll find it soon.
Okay, the underline on a Dachshund, the deepest part should be hidden by the front leg. Right there. Deepest part. And then it comes gradually up. If you don't have any carry back of ribbing, you get a whippet or a sighthound herring gutted look. Plus, this here is muscles that support the back.
So if you end up with
They're not tubes.
a short rib cage or the ribs themselves angle very quickly up. And then you end up with this
Long loin.
long loin. One of the things that you frequently will see is a soft top line. Why is that? There's no ribs to support it. It's, you know, if this dog was 4 inches longer and no changes were made in the rib cage, I guarantee you she would not have a great top line.
It would either be this way or this way. And this is in all Dachshunds. All 3 varieties and both sizes. If you don't get this oval, short loin, long rib cage, good strong rear, you can stack them up all day long.
Talk about, this is something as somebody who's in the ring all the time. How do you, as a Dachshund breeder, view Dachshunds that weigh 8 pounds, 12 pounds, 16 pounds, 20 pounds, and 30 pounds? They're all, let's say those are all specials.
Well, for
what
me,
do you say?
okay, for me, and Dave
And
may be different.
Could you hear that, Tom?
That, first of all, in the United States, we have refused to separate Dachshunds based on size, whether it's weight, chest circumference, or anything else. We have a Dachshund. We have a single class called the Open Miniature Class for dogs 11 pounds and under, 12 months of age or greater. I have no preference for the size of the dog. When I look at the dog, I should be able to see it without anything else around me and technically not be able to tell whether it's a miniature or standard. That being said, we are chondroplastic dwarfs, so we've already taken them and smushed their legs down. Then we've said we want miniatures or Dachshunds to hunt in rabbit holes as opposed to badger holes. As Annie Clark will tell you, nature does not like to shrink things down. And the difference between a dwarf and a miniature or a midget is a dwarf has shortened limbs, normal size trunk and body. You think of that in the human, they have short limbs, a normal sized head and body. A midget, like Tiny Tim, the guy in the circus in the 20s, you take the whole person and shrink everything down. It's like you put it in the Xerox machine and decrease the size. Now we've taken a chondroplastic dwarf, shrunk it. There are 2 things that nature doesn't like to shrink: the eye and the brain, or the head, the skull. So if I put 2 dogs, and this is me personally, on the table, and I grade this standard as an 8.2, and I grade this miniature as an 8.1, and the only difference is that this miniature's back skull is slightly wider, or the eye is slightly larger, which of course would make it a little more round, the miniature's going to win in my class because this one was harder to get and produce. Now, does that happen? No. The reverse of that is, if I have the standard in the ring and it's an 8.2 and the miniature is an 8.2, I ain't going to put the miniature up just because it's a miniature. It won because of the positives. How do you feel?
I really feel that size is secondary. I want for me when it comes to judging those dogs. It's going to be how they perform, how they utilize what it is that God gave them. So it's going to come down to movement. It's going to come down to the basic structure of the dog. Attitude. We talked, someone asked a question earlier, I think, about tails. And somebody talked about a tail that never came up, that stayed down. If you've been around long enough, you know that there's two reasons why that tail is like that. One could be attitude. Attitude is most likely going to be the cause if the dog had a correct set. However, it is possible that if the dog's tail set was just a little off, that someone decided to deal with the fact that it never put its tail below a 45-degree angle. It never came out straight. And so, as has happened in the terrier ring probably more than any place else, the dog had its tail hit, as we say. It's a surgical procedure that involves nicking the tendon so it does not hold the tail up as tight. And it's a very delicate procedure, and if it's not done absolutely perfectly,
you get a dead tail.
You could end up with what we call a dead tail that just always is down. It never moves. It doesn't move sideways. It's just a dead tail.
What they give their top 3 priorities in Dachshunds.
We'll get to that. I want to get to some of these questions. Ann Schmidt asked, could you briefly discuss muscle tone? 2 times around a ring shouldn't tire a Dachshund out. What do you guys look for in muscle tone on a Dachshund?
Well, for me, there is a limit. We talk about dogs that load, what we call load up. And it's harder to tell a dog that's loaded up with a coat, but it's easy to tell in a smooth-haired dachshund because they end up with muscles on their fronts that makes them look like weightlifters.
Yeah, Dachshunds should look like long-distance runners, that type of an athlete, not one that lifts weights. When I check muscle tone, I just squeeze the thigh a little bit. Do I see a lot of Dachshunds that are not in good muscle tone? Absolutely.
I see a lot of dogs not in good muscle tone.
Well, yeah, the majority of dogs are mushy. But the other thing is, one of the things you have to realize, if they're in bad muscle tone, they are not, I don't care how well they're put together, they are not going to hold their top line, move correctly, and these are athletes.
Or look the same after 3 times around the ring.
Yeah, by the 3rd time of the ring, you're going to lose your top line. They're going to be sloppy in the front, not drive through.
Their tongue's going to be hanging out of the side of their mouth, and guess what?
They're not going to win. It's like bulldogs. Bulldogs ought to be able to go around the ring once without throwing up. And trust me, a lot of them can't.
Elliot Wenzel asks, do you fault it if the handler overstacks or overhandles the dog?
Absolutely not, because I'm a terrible handler. However, if you screw the dog up, I'm not going to help you. So if I've got somebody who's a lousy handler like me, I may fix the front a little bit. But if you're standing there and you're baiting your dog up and giving it a vertical neck and holding its tail up to here, or even worse, racing it around the ring, I'll tell you once, but ask Carlos, by the 3rd time you lose. He didn't believe me on the very first time I judged. By the third class he showed to, he was fourth in a class of 4. That's where he was going to go anyway, but he didn't know that. And so he doesn't run. Marietta doesn't run. Nobody runs a dachshund in my ring.
Let me add to that.
So don't.
Think about my opening comment about the first time I judged dachshunds, and how beautifully set up the dogs were, and then they took 4 or 5 steps, and everything changed. The best handler in the world can't change the dog that has a stick straight front. He can move it, but I bet you he moves it fast. And if you move a straight dog fast, you
harder to see.
minimize the bounce that you get from a straight front, and you give the illusion of reach.
I will tell you that the very...
Let me finish.
Okay.
The other thing is that I am more often inclined to help a bad handler. And what I will do is I won't touch the dog. But I frequently judge the class of dogs where it is clear that I had no professional handlers. Absolutely not. These were all owner handlers, and they weren't the best owner handlers in the world. But they had some nice dogs. One of my favorite things to do in that circumstance is I have everybody get up, because I don't like them down anyway, and I have them all go about 4 or 5 steps and stop and let the dog stand on its own. You would be amazed how nice some of the good ones look, and the bad ones look as bad as they looked before.
We've got a couple more questions, then we're going to just wrap it up here. Sandy Arnold asks, Pam referred to this somewhat, but what dachshund characteristics do you weigh more heavily in the ring because you know it's challenging to get in the whelping box? What would you tell all breed judges trying to learn breed type?
You want to go first? Or you want me to?
If you have a dachshund that does not have a forechest, that does not have a keel that extends past the leg,
behind the front legs, that has a roached top line, up in the head,
you don't have a good dachshund. You don't understand dachshund type.
To me, the first thing I look at as they go around is I want the proportions. This is a long, low, level, not straight dog. The last thing I look at is the headpiece and the amount of coat. I'm going to look at the moving profile and the substance. These dogs are not as heavy as a Basset, but they have round, sturdy bones, good bone. And so when you look at a dachshund, you should see an animal that can move in the field for a long period of time, go down a hole, and live with the family, have a good temperament. The first 2 dogs I excused were due to temperament. So when people say to me, what is the most important thing?
Temperament.
I guess it's temperament. You've got a dog with big, sharp teeth and a strong jaw. And if it's going to bite people, it's going to hurt. So that is very important.
One of the last points I would like to make is that if you come from a short-coated breed and you're going to judge dachshunds, spend some time looking at longer coated breeds and wire coated breeds so that your eye can get used to ignoring what the hair does.
And the last thing I would say is, these are chondroplastic dwarfs. They have short legs. If you're coming from working, sporting dogs, herding dogs, if you aren't used to looking at short-legged chondroplastic dwarf dogs, you are going to have trouble. Get into the mode of that. Think about it.
Okay, we're going to wrap up here, and we're actually going to have Maggie interview and ask her parents a few more questions to close out.
Yeah.
And and then yeah, we'll finish up.
Okay. So these are questions as judges. So
Okay.
make sure you have your judge hat on.
Not my mom hat.
Not your mom and dad hat, and not your Primata breeding hat. I want your judge hat on.
Okay.
Tell me what you think when you're judging. Do you compare, how do you evaluate efficient side gait versus speed and flash?
Okay.
And wait, and before that, and is that more important than the standing still picture?
To me, a moderately trotting Dachshund is the most important way I evaluate them. These judges that stand have them stacked up and walk up and down and look at them. It's like, unless you can see their processing, it's wrong. You cannot judge Dachshunds standing still, period. You also cannot judge Dachshunds racing around the ring like a standard poodle. The ones look good doing that are the ones with the straight fronts and the straight rears and the vertical necks.
Dad.
Off my soapbox.
Flash and dash doesn't count. It won't get you down the hole, and it won't get you back out of the hole.
Or to my house.
If you can't make it from point A to point B, that's a problem. I think back to something that I observed watching a completely different breed and listening to a judge commenting on that breed's movement. I think the most important thing that I can look for when I see a dachshund moving around the ring is efficiency.
Balance and efficiency.
I want to see the dog that goes from point A to point B with the least number of steps.
Thank you. And then, so this is about judging Dachshunds. I would like each of you to give your top 3 things that if you could have, we're going to discount coat and size. So a Dachshund, what are your top 3 things that if you get those 3 things in a dog, in that order, what are their priorities? Because as our standard does not give priorities.
No priorities.
So as a Dachshund breeder and a judge, how do you view the priorities of our breed?
For me, the priorities are front.
Can you be specific? Are you talking about prosternum, or are you talking about shoulder angle, or are you talking about the whole thing?
I am talking about the entire front structure of the dog.
So if the dog has a big prosternum standing still, but it has a straight shoulder, it's not a good front.
It's not a good front.
That's not a good front.
No, I'm talking about it's got prosternum, it's got a good layback of shoulder, it's got a nice long upper arm, it's properly set on the thorax of the dog. That's number 1. Number 2, I want a balancing rear that can motivate the dog forward and not have the dog try to pull itself around the ring or in through the hole. Third, I want a body. I want that appropriate top line, carry back, well sprung, but not barrel ribbed, well sprung ribs, and good carry back.
So front, rear, body.
Yep.
Mom?
I would say that the front, and that includes some type of prosternum, appropriate layback, set underneath, this way, not this way. Second for me would be body and rear, body and length of keel, which is going to create your top line and your neck set and all those things. And third would be the balance between the front and the rear. What doesn't come into play for me is the amount of coat, the color of the coat. I really don't care. As I have been quoted in a magazine as saying, the coat is just the clothes on the dachshund. A good dachshund doesn't come in a bad color or pattern, and a bad dachshund doesn't come in a good color. So balance is important. Form follows function.
And can you guys, just to wrap up, your pet peeve when you're judging dachshunds? We already have moms.
Mm-hmm.
Very.
And if you don't know it,
make sure you ask before you show to her. Dad, do you have a pet peeve when people show to you?
Yeah, my pet peeve is the person who does not understand that dogs look different at different speeds. And therefore, they have never taken the time to evaluate their own dog, to know in their own mind that I'm going too fast or I'm going too slow. And so they take what might be a very nice example of a dachshund, but because they don't understand the concepts that come into play, they move it too fast and they get too narrow, or they move it too slow
and the butt goes up.
And the butt goes up in the air and they get too wide. But yet, the same dog with a different handler who knows what they're doing, it looks completely different. That's my pet peeve, because I'm trying to find the best dog. I don't really want to find the best handled dog.
And as a judge and someone who educates, I got a couple of hints for Doxy judges. I kind of touched it in general. One, obviously, don't let them run. Two, examine them on the table, judge them on the floor. And three, if you don't touch the salient, important areas on the dachshund, you look like idiots.
Dad, so Mom just gave, that was my final question. So we gave some pointers to people watching as exhibitors, but as prospective judges or current judges, what is your pet peeve or most important thing you want to see judges do when they're judging dachshunds, be it an exam or while they're moving or what they're making their final decision on? What to you is your biggest complaint when watching?
Massage.
Specific to dachshund.
I am always amazed when I watch someone put their hands on all the right places, but then is unable to translate that into how the dog moves. They find the nice long return of upper arm.
Or the layback.
They find a nice layback of shoulder.
The pretty head.
They find a beautiful head, but then the dog goes into the ring and is up against the dog that's less well constructed, but is moved fast, or has lots of coat, or is always stacked up with the front stuffed in their face. and they can't find the dog that they felt had the best structure.
And the last thing is, please, these are Dachshunds. They don't like to stand like little statues. They're active. When you stand and look at a group of Dachshunds stacked up, they're not going to stand there for hours. And it makes you look like you don't know what you're doing. When in doubt, move them. They'll sort themselves.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, so first we want to thank Pam and Dave for taking the time to do this. And some people have commented on the beautiful backdrop. We just want to say that that was a gift that Pam made for us. So we'll show that nice little quilt off. We want to thank Canine Chronicle for hosting this on their page. We appreciate it. We've had some questions asking where we could see the video we did last time. That should be up on the Canine Chronicle videos history. It is also on our Primata Corodox YouTube page. You can find that at Primata Corodox on YouTube. This video will also be up on the Chronicle page under their videos to see later if you've missed the beginning. It will also be up by tomorrow on our YouTube page at Primata Corodox. You can see it there. And we will definitely be doing something again about something at some time. So thanks for tuning in. We have fun doing it. We hope you had fun listening. And we will see you all next time. Have a great weekend.